he's going to continue to find a new home, if that makes sense. He even briefly teams with Too Cold Scorpio, which in hindsight, again, to your point, why are all these African Americans always teaming with African Americans? But there it is. But in late 98, he starts something totally new. We're going to do a whole episode on this sometime, but Simmons starts teaming with Bradshaw and they become the Acolytes. And they start out a lot different from the way people maybe remember. They're violent, they're badasses, and they show up sporting like occult symbolism on their tights and chest. They're managed very briefly by the Jackal and then eventually become a part of
Callus.
Yes, sir. The invisible hand, if you will. Eventually they're a part of the Ministry of Darkness led by the Undertaker. That's a whole different presentation than what the Acolytes are going to become with APA and all that. But it is a new lease on life for Ron Simmons in the WWF. What'd you think of the occult style pairing with him and Layfield?
Well, I thought Ron and JBL had great chemistry. I thought they were friends. They liked each other. They traveled together. They developed a kinship and a trust. I think was very important. I think they're still best friends this very day here in 2021. So, I'm not a big fan of the occult stuff. And the reason being is that we had one person that was playing that gimmick.
And doing a good job.
Pretty good job.
Yeah.
Undertaker. So I wasn't crazy about that part of the presentation, but I wasn't so negative about it that I couldn't see it working. But those guys are so believable. The Acolytes are so believable. You couldn't see through their stuff. They worked hard. They were physical. And, I like their poker, the little scenes where they started playing poker and doing things. They were believable, man. And in real life, they're believable. So I always liked and respected the Acolytes, but I wasn't a big fan. And they overcome my lack of fandom because of the occult stuff or whatever it was, the crest, the things on their chest and little symbols. I'm a goofy ass guy from Eastern Oklahoma. I didn't know what the symbols even meant.
No, they didn't either. They just made them up. It was no big deal. I want to mention the Acolytes recruited Phineas and Mabel to join the ministry. They're going to feud with all the Undertaker's rivals like DX and the Brood, what ultimately they actually wind up joining too. But what's more important is Ron finally finds some success here and picks up some gold. He's going to have 2 short reigns as tag team champions here. They're going to defeat the team of Kane and X-Pac and then lose them back to the Hardys. At the Fully Loaded pay-per-view in 99, they win the titles back in a no DQ handicap match against the Hardys and Michael Hayes. Ultimately they lose that set of tag belts to Kane and X-Pac. Overall, I didn't love the Ministry of Darkness angle, but that's a discussion for another time. Let's talk about when the Undertaker suffers an injury in late 99. They finally disband the Ministry of Darkness, and Farouk and Bradshaw are going to continue on as a tag team, but eventually they adopt a totally different presentation. Now they're 2 brawlers who enjoy drinking beer and smoking cigars and playing cards or dominoes, and they become the Acolyte Protection Agency, or APA for short. I love the presentation with the makeshift office and usually just a door and no walls and really fun stuff. I got to think this is something that Brian Gerwitz was a big part of. What can you tell us about this pairing and why fans loved it so much?
Well, that was right down Brian Gerwitz's alley. He was very creative and could see the comedy in a lot of things, the more positive presentation. Of all the incarnations following the Nation of Domination, the APA was my favorite. I didn't, again, the occult stuff and all that. Okay. It just takes me out of reality. I think the more often that we create pro wrestling gimmicks, or more better said, pro wrestling personas, TV personas, it creates more eye rolling.
Right.
It's hard to believe. So now I've got to sell you. That's like, it's like what we talked about. It is a good example, I think, when Ron was managed by Sonny, playing the role of woman, as the new Islamic name. I had to stop and process as a fan. So I stopped feeling what they were doing because they're still trying to figure out who they are or who he is or what's going on. It wasn't a good Anytime you take the character and the persona takes your eye off the ball, Conrad, you're not being productive. You're not building that guy. And I believe that's kind of where we were with that situation. But the thing about the APA, Ron and John fit that bill. I didn't have to believe bullshit. I didn't, and I understand what pro wrestling is, but I didn't stop and have to process, what is an APA? Acolyte Protection Agency. And I could see them playing poker. I could see them smoking those cigars, as we talked about. So to me, it worked out real well. I like that presentation. And the thing about it is they didn't compromise their physical style. No matter who the APA worked with, Conrad, they busted their ass and they laid their shit in.